Good morning, students. Welcome to TY BCom English Medium Semester 5 at Anand Commerce College, Anand. These online lectures are being delivered as per the directives of Government of Gujarat. Myself, Professor Devang Trivedi, shall engage you for the subject Business Ethics, having a paper code UB05 SCOM 21 as effective from June 2020 by Sardar Patel University, Vallavidyanagar. In the last lecture, we discussed about the second unit, that is environmental ethics, and we talked about introduction, sustainable development, resource depletion, air pollution, etc. Now we further discuss about land pollution. What is land pollution? We know from our foregoing discussion about the air pollution that any substances that don't normally belong there, which in great enough concentration can have harmful effects on our environment, including plants, animals, and humans. We can define land pollution narrowly that it's another term of soil concentration. For example, by factory chemicals or sewage and other wastewater. If we include garbage, industrial waste, agriculture pesticides, and fertilizers, then the impact from mining and other forms of industry, the unwanted consequences of urbanization, and the systematic destruction of soil through over intensive agriculture, then that becomes a broad meaning of a land pollution, which will have a kind of long term land damage, destruction, and degradation, or we can say a loss. Now, what causes land pollution? There are many different ways of permanently changing the land from soil contamination, that is poisoning by chemical or waste, to general urbanization, that is the systematic creation of cities and other human settlements from greenfield, virgin land, etc. Some, such as huge landfills or quarries, are very obvious, and others, such as atmospheric deposition, where land becomes contaminated when air pollutants fall onto it, are much less apparent. Humans produce vast quantities of waste in factories and offices, in other homes and schools, and in such unlikely places like hospitals as well. Even the most sophisticated waste processing plants also produces the waste, and there is simply no getting away from the waste. So our ultimate fate as humans is to die and become waste products that have to be burned or buried. Waste disposal did not always mean land pollution. Before the 20th century, most of the materials people used were completely natural, that is, produced from either plants, animal, or minerals found in the earth. So, when they were disposed of, the waste products they generated were natural and harmless. Mostly they were organic, that is carbon based, and materials that would simply biodegrade, that is break down eventually into soil like compost. there was really nothing we could put into the earth that was more harmful than anything we would take from it in the first place. But during the 20th century, the development of plastics, composites, and other synthetic material has produced a new generation of unnatural material that the natural environment has no idea how to break it down. It can take 500 years for the plastic bottle to biodegrade. And while it's easy enough to recycle simple things such as cardboard boxes or steel cans, it's much harder to do the same thing with computer circuit boards made from dozens of different electronic components themselves, made from countless metals and other chemicals, all tightly bonded together and almost impossible to disseminate. Then you have a mining. Although there are many responsible mining companies and environmental laws, how tightly restrict mining in some countries, mines remain among the most obvious scars on the landscape. Surface mining, sometimes called quarrying or open cast mining, requires the removal of topsoil, that is the fertile layer of soil, and organic matter that is particularly a valuable for agriculture, to get the valuable rocks that from below. Even if the destruction of topsoil is the worst that happens, it can turn a productive landscape into barren one, which is a kind of pollution and causes a land to degrade. Then there is also a urbanization. Humans have been making permanent settlement for at least 10,000 years, and that short of some major accident or natural disaster, most of the cities and towns we have created and the infrastructure that keeps them running will remain with us for thousands more years into the future. And not many of us would automatically classify cities and other human settlement as land pollution. People obviously need to live and work somewhere. So even so, urbanization marks a hugely important change to the landscape that can cause land pollution in a variety of subtle and non so subtle ways. Then there is an agriculture chemicals. Those of us who are lucky enough to live in rich countries take our basic survival for granted. Aside them trips to the grocery store, we don't worry about where our food comes from or how it gets to us. The reality is that 7 billion hungry people consume a vast amount of food, and feeding the world on such a scale is only possible because agriculture now works in an industrial way with giant machines such as tractors and combine harvesters doing the work that hundreds of people would have done in the past, and chemicals such as fertilizers and pesticides, increasing the amount of food that can be grown in each piece of land. Unfortunately, most pesticides and fertilizers are by definition poison, and many remain in the soil or accumulate there for years. That is DDT is not ordinarily biodegradable, so it has remained in the environment ever since it was first used in the mid 20th century and even spread to such places as Antarctica. DDT is just one example, but there are many such chemicals. Then you have atmospheric disposition. So air pollution doesn't remain air pollution forever. Ideally it disposes, so the concentration of problematic chemical becomes so low that it is no longer constitute pollution. Sometimes though it falls back on the ground and becomes either water pollution or land pollution. And pollution created in water or land from existing pollution in the air is known as atmospheric disposition. And land can become polluted by disposition in some very unexpected way. Then there is a soil erosion that is going on around the world, and that is desertification. Once productive agriculture areas become barren, useless deserts, and that is also unfortunately a very big contributor to the soil erosion and a land pollution. Then there are other reasons, say like climate change. Then there is excessive rain, and that also creates a lot of problem for the land pollution. Now when you have a land pollution, it has a lot of effects, that the productivity goes down. Then it also creates a lot of trouble for the human health, and ultimately the cost of land goes up, and the land becomes barren and unproductive, and that ultimately lead to a big problem for the human civilization. So ultimately we have to look for the ethical solutions for the conservation of the environment, and we'll have to see that how can we stop this land pollution and how we solve the problems. The first such solution is, we can go for recycling, that the toxic airborne dust, fly ash, so all these things, if you go for recycling of old materials, it can reduce our need for new ones, and ultimately lesser industrialization. Then we can move for a organic food and farming, so that is a less harmful, uses less chemicals and fertilizers, and that is also good for the human health. Then there is a wind farms. We can make use of the wind energy, so less power plants using gas and coal. We can go for a hydropower plants, solar panels, then bioremediation and pythoremediation. So all these are the things which we can definitely undergo and can practice. So in the longer run, we can achieve a better result for the solution of a land pollution. In a country like India, which is a population of around 1.3 billion, so in a population, we are a largely populated country, and we need a lot of such measures to be taken, because we cannot increase the land, and increasing the land, it is not in our hand. And we have to just live with whatever land that we are having, and also we'll have to stop polluting the land. And I mentioned certain steps for stopping the pollution of the land, and all such steps must be taken very seriously, so that in the long run we can stop a land pollution. We are a country which requires a feeding of 1.3 billion people, as you know, and we are a country which is largely a vegetarian country, so we need to produce a lot of crop, but simultaneously we'll also have to see that how can we stop polluting our land and can go for a cleaner land in the long run, and ultimately we free ourselves from a land pollution. Then the next point is a ecological ethics. Students, today everybody is talking about stopping the air pollution, stopping the land pollution. But the problem is how to do that. Because only government alone cannot practice a issue of stopping the land pollution or an air pollution. It is the people, we the people of the country, we the people of the world will have to very seriously understand the need for the ecological ethics. As I mentioned earlier, we'll have to go for a more environmental friendly lifestyle, and that would promote a form of ecological ethics. Many environmental activists around the world like Bayard Caldicott, Arne and Holmes, they have on many occasions they have proposed various ways to promote the ecological ethics. But the problem is so large and the problem is so diverse and grave that if only few people will work and majority of the people will continue to pollute, then sorry, we will not be able to promote ecological ethics. Ecological ethics in an academic way can be defined as the moral relationship between human and the natural environment. It is an area of environmental philosophy that faces a lot of conflict due to the various subdivisions in the terms of ethical perception. For a traditional and religious views, some people believe that they were given domino over nature's plants and animals to serve their needs. And the idea of human-centered nature or anthropocentrism explicitly states that humans are the sole bearer of intrinsic valued all other living things on this planet, and that is completely unethical. Ecocentrism and as I said anthropocentrism are recognized as one of the common ecological moral dilemmas, and people who hold atmospheric view acknowledge themselves as being the only most significant entities in the universe while disregarding animals and plants unless they provide life necessities such as nutrition, clothing, shelter, and medical benefits. And consequently, human exploitation and abuse of the natural environment has been observed all along the very large scale. On the other hand, the living things on earth, regardless of their usefulness to human, they continue to be exploited by humans from all angles. So we need to have some form of now a trade of between how much we need to exploit and how much we need to keep for our future generation by pursuing the concept of and this ecological ethics. Human nature need to intrinsic principles of both and keep ourselves away from economic principles, and we should not always look at everything that is economically more advantageous to us and keep on exploiting them. That is where the ecological ethics comes into picture. Like say in the field of milk production, lot of injections are being given to the animals, especially see in India buffaloes and cows are being injected with a chemicals that increases the milk production, but in the long run that is unethical. The animal is contracted with lot of disease, and the future generation of the same animal, that is buffaloes and cows, will come with lot of natural problems. Then in agriculture also we tend to use lot of chemicals and pesticides that on one hand help us to increase the production of vegetables and grains or fruits, but they simultaneously kill other species. So nature has created all the species so that there is a balance between all of them, and all the living organism can live together very happily for the long run. But that very principle is forgotten, and we have kept on exploiting all this without any serious thought to it. Lot of laws have also been made by the government, but we do not observe those laws. We try to break the laws, and there is a collusion between the politicians, bureaucrats, and also the mafias in the field of industry, commerce, agriculture, and law enforcement agencies. So in collusion of all these people, we continue to break the laws that are there to protect the environment and maintain ecological ethics. And we continue to break the laws and damage our environment and ecology. And that in the long run has created a lot of problems for the human beings, for their health, and for a very happy and long life. In India, as I said earlier, we are a country of a population of 1.3 billion, and if we want to really feed these people and make them responsible, then it is important that we follow the law, we follow the rules, and we conserve our ecology. Ecology means that we conserve our resources, that is natural resources, that is land, water, air, and all natural habitants, that is animals, birds, plants, and all types of natural resources that we are gifted with. The next point is conservation of natural resources. In my earlier discussion about the air pollution, land pollution, and ecological ethics, I made enough mention about the conservation of natural resources. In today's world, conservation of natural resources has been a challenging task, because we have followed a model of development that is a capitalistic model of development. And in capitalistic model of development, there is only one way to go, and that is a growth and development. And in this growth and development, we tend to kill everything that come into the way of development. And therefore, as I said, it has become a challenging task in the present state of affairs where economy prevails over ecology. Students, international treaties and conventions are signed, but those international treaties and conventions, they only remain on paper. When it comes to a implementation, because ultimately whatever has been discussed, agreed upon and signed needs to be implemented. So when the question of implementation comes, then the problem arises, and there is hardly any efforts from the developing countries and developed countries, because everyone is after job creation, everyone is after increasing the standard of living and exploitation of natural resources. So how to conserve? The way is, as I told you earlier, go for a very simple approach, that is soil, water and energy. And that is why protecting and conserving these and other natural resources should be a priority of all who live and work in the world, including farmers. This is not a new idea for the world. Since 1935, when the soil pollution and water pollution came to the table of discussion, the World Health Organization and UNESCO, they came up with a lot of idea that how to conserve the natural resources. Various states and federal governments all around the world have been initiated to protect natural resources. The programs have evolved over the years to take advantage of advances in agriculture practices, construction and large-scale production. In addition, the programs offers technical, financial and regulatory assistance and provides educational outreach to landowners throughout the country. A number of programs provide assistance to eligible factory, that is industrialists, farmers and home dwell owners to address the problem of wetlands, woodlands and wildlife habitats. A few of the voluntary programs even provide payments to producers who have historically practiced good stewardship on their land and provide incentives to those who want to do more for the conservation of natural resources. Environment quality incentive program have also been launched in some of the countries around the world, which provides financial, technical and educational assistance to especially farmers for conservation practices that address natural resource concern. However, based on past experience also, it is unlikely that this federal funding or say the funding by the government will only help for the conservation of natural resources. The mining activities is going on all around the world, and as the production activities, that is mass production, calls for mass requirement for raw materials, and that itself requires a huge compilation of a mining activities and materials. That requires now a serious consideration, and we need to conserve this mining, that is through a natural resource conservation. This program that is initiated by various governments, and in India we have a separate department working at the central level, that is at the government of India level, that is seriously looking at the issues, and there is also a separate department at the state level, that is every state including our Gujarat has a department that exclusively look for this state pollution control board, and that gives guidelines for the conservation of pollution, that is conservation of natural resources through curbing the various types of pollution. So students, today we have seen the three major important points, that is land pollution,